And this is like a common behavior of which victims do, is probably someone who was once ambitious and never got there. And if I was ambitious and never got there, then I shouldn't be using the measurement of which success is judged by to say this is why I optimized for something else in the end. You should be measuring it the exact same way that you once optimized for. Or you could divert the accountability to say, not that I'm inferior, but this person was superior. And I knew that they were superior, which is why now me telling you before it even happened makes me as superior as them. Again, it's like allowing yourself to fail, which means you were always right in the first place. If my football team, if I'm going for the Central Coast Mariners and I'm saying, go Mariners, but if Sydney FC win, they're the better team, and it's like I think they're going to win anyways, or they could win, whatever it is. Maybe I go for Mariners and I just say, oh, I think Sydney FC are going to win. All of a sudden, when Central Coast Mariners win, I win because they're my team. Even though I didn't believe in them, I still win. And then if Sydney FC win, I win because I called it. I said, oh, Sydney FC is going to win. They're going to win, even though I go for Mariners. And all of a sudden, you were right either way. And you're allowing yourself to fail because you know that whatever happens, you still win. And this person irks me. But it's also something to where I can be like, I understand where you come from, because you actually do have a good base point to start off. But let's just change it a little bit. Just take responsibility when you lose. It's your team, you lost. And don't try and claim something else to which you had no impact over. So if I then, if Sydney FC win, and I'm like, they were the better team.
Good luck to my ancestors.
Hope they're well.
Hope they're well.
Great little caviar.
Very good caviar.
Welcome to this episode of the podcast. Another solo episode by myself, because that's what solo means. Maths. So, this episode, we've got a few topics. Success is subjective, but don't use it as an excuse for your lack of objective success. Then we've also got talking about delayed gratification when it comes to success. And I talk a lot about success here. What I'm talking about success, I'm typically talking about the outward measurements of success. Now, I'm someone who I would like to say that success is subjective. But there is also a degree of objective success, right? Because the homeless guy who plays... finish the sentence, plays whatever, as long as it's not productive, you could argue he plays the street corner. He's just, constantly begging for money. Not to say that that's not an honorable trade, but there is a level of objective success to where it's never been easier. Now, I'm not discounting external things, and I can't... It'd be counterintuitive to the narrative here, to what I'm actually saying, to say that homeless people, or every single homeless person, can get themselves out of it, because I'm sure that you could pull out some random homeless guy who you'd be able to say, Nick, look at everything in his life, he actually couldn't. And then I'd be like, yeah, I revoke everything. But no, the reality is let's say 99% can actually do something about it. Now, I'm not saying it's going to fix it, but I've got into such a theological debate about homelessness all of a sudden. Caviar. But there is a level of objective success to which a homeless person doesn't have. And whether it's in their control or not, that's not really the argument that I'm making here. So, talking about success is subjective, but don't use it as an excuse for your lack of objective success. So, I've met a lot of people who are always telling me that success is subjective, and the way that they see success is different to how everyone else sees success. And to that, again, I don't disagree with it, but then don't use your lack of objective success as an excuse. Now, I've got a very good example of someone who talks about objective success compared to subjective success, and I really agree with them on this. And they're someone very close to me. They are someone who really tried to get a level of objective success, but didn't necessarily get there yet. They may get there. I actually believe they can get there. And the main thing that he has outlined to me is the characteristics of a successful person. And this I agree with. The characteristics of a successful person is actually what defines success. Subjectively, not objectively. Objectively, what defines success is the end result. And actually, it should be like that. Because not one person in this earth is going to put enough time and effort into understanding how someone's subjective level of success is, their truth or whatever they say. No one's going to put out. If I was to try and understand three people's subjective success in a day, I wouldn't have enough hours in my day. I have to fully understand everything about them and, hear and rationalize to why they believe this. And, I'm not going to turn understanding people into a full-time job in this instance. So, level of objective success, the person who I'm speaking about, I really like their opinion on it, and I would agree with it, to which is the characteristics of which make up a successful person is the subjective opinion of success for most people, and it should be. That's almost the subjective objective, but the objective is actually the outward perception, realistically. And a lot of it is perception. Like, if I go look at some OF star, then subjectively she doesn't have the traits. Ooh, look at me, Mr. Sexist over here, assuming that they're women. Because most of them are. But I'm sure there's a few guys out there, and big ups. Hope you're well, by the way. Friend of the pod. No. Lies. Anyways, caviar, as usual. They do not necessarily have the traits of a successful person, or the characteristics of a successful person, I should say. Maybe they do. Some of them do. Maybe they understand business really well. Maybe they've gone through a lot of hardship and struggle to get to, the point where they are. I'd say that a lot of hardship and struggle probably comes with the negative repercussions of doing said actions. So let's say, losing people who once respected you. This is like a hardship of which may not be valued in hard struggles, like to get to a specific point, but it's maybe the repercussions of which you face after getting to that point. And I would say that these character traits, and this is a little bit weird to actually dissect, but I would say that, and this is also a little bit counterintuitive of me to for my narrative, although for, intellectual consistency's sake, I should make this argument, which is if someone does get to the point where they are, selling their soul for money, they are also in a position to where they can actually learn those skills and attributes much quicker than someone who is doing it the right way, because they are dropped straight in the deep end and then they're forced to figure out, how do I actually now make this a business, or how do I actually make this, or how do I gain the characteristics of which will help me replicate this wealth in the future? Because they've been put in a privileged position and they've given up a lot of sacrifice. And again, it's a little bit counter to my narrative here, but it is the truth, which is that even if it is morally wrong, or whatever you deem it as, in my opinion it would be, then you're still in a position of which can help you get the characteristics of objective success, which may point out that objective success isn't a great thing. But I would say, again, the characteristics are. And then you could also then argue that if they're learning the characteristics and they have the characteristics, then this is a good thing. It's just the way that they got there may not be the best. And also, if they then get those characteristics, they may actually, steer away from what they previously have done, because they can realize that they can actually make more money doing another thing. And whatever it is, objective success is typically tied with money. Now, I've also spoken about it before in this podcast, to where money is actually not the best measurement of success. The best measurement of success is crafting points in the Sculpted app. So make sure you do download the Sculpted app, right? Not an ad, paid ad. It was an ad. Jokes. Waffle. The best measurement of success is genuinely nothing. We have no measurement of true replication of success, because not that it is outwardly subjective. As I've said before, it is much more outwardly objective, but a lot of it is also based on perception. So if I see, the billionaire but has a horrible family life, then maybe the guy who's on minimum wage, who's got a great family life, is as objectively successful. And I've had a conversation with Alfie about this before, which is talking about how quite often person A will have person B's problem and vice versa. So if I'm a millionaire and my biggest problem is I don't have enough time with my family, or my family don't love me, but person B their biggest issue is they don't have enough money, but they have person A's solution, which is they have a great family, their family loves them. And they both have each other's problem and solution, essentially. Like the counter of each other's problem and solution. So person A, who wants the, awesome family, person B has that. But they don't have person A's luxury, which is the money. And person B needs that. And the one thing about the world is that it's so nuanced. It is so nuanced. There really aren't too many objective rules. Although I would love to operate in a society where there were. There really aren't too many objective rules. And this is what is making it so difficult to navigate. And I actually think that that's a nice thing, because it also means that there's going to be people who are, ideally, the cream of the crop rise. Now, that's not the case. The cream of the crop don't rise. But it does allow, some smart people to navigate through the system to ideally work their way up to the top, which is what I'd, like to imagine does eventually happen for majority of people. Now, I can't claim that that's true or not, but I would like to imagine, as said. Now, to the main point, which is success is subjective, but don't use it as an excuse for your lack of objective success. Now, the way that I actually came to this thought is when you hear people talking about other people who are objectively successful, and then you're saying to other people, oh, but they're not even happy, or they're not even this, or they're not even that. Yes, they may not be. Although, that's not necessarily what they're optimizing for. And the level of which we measure people for, or measure people as, is not said measurement that you're then measuring them for. And it's not that they're necessarily any better, or you're any better, per se. That's not the measurement here. The measurement is, have they been able to recreate wealth at mass scale? Which, again, is exactly why money is not a great measurement of success. Because if I just told you before about how, posting one picture of can get you a young, humble 3 bags, and you can do that 20 days out of the month, and you've, earned your way up to a multi-million-dollar salary or whatever, income, I guess, because, they're entrepreneurs, hustlers, come on now. They actually are, to be fair, but not that I would like to admit that for the narrative's sake, but they are. Anyways, okay, yeah. Don't use your lack of success as an excuse. So, to bring it in, I've heard many people say, oh yeah, they're not happy, X, Y, and Z, and then their excuse is for the lack of objective success, because I don't want it. Because I don't want $1 million, or I don't want to be that successful, because I know what happens if you're that successful. And sure, there may be truth to it, but a lot of the time, pretty much everyone wants some level or yearns for some level of objective success, because it's not just the money of which is rewarded at the end of the rainbow success, because it's also status. It's ego. And I think ego is actually such a massive driver. And one way that I've heard this used the most is actually like a falling pad for one's own downfall. So, an example, I know a few people who have this victim mentality as well, to where if I was to say, I think that, okay, I'm in a race. I'm in a 100-meter race, okay? I'm this person. I'm going to say, I'd like to win, but I think this person's actually going to win. And what happens there is this person is essentially winning no matter what, because they are saying that if they do win, that's cool. Like, I think I can win. But I wouldn't be surprised if this person wins. And then as soon as they run this race and they don't win, they've essentially given themselves permission to fail, because all of a sudden now their argument is, oh, look, I knew I was never going to win anyways, and he's much faster. And this is like a common behavior of which victims do. Victims always, a smart victim does this, actually. A dumb victim is just a victim who just knows it or plays the victim card every single time. But a smart victim will try and win off it. And I know a few people like this. And this is exactly what using a lack of your subjective or objective success as being subjective, and it being an excuse for your lack of objective success. To where you're like, no, I want this, and now because I got that, that's okay with me. But typically the person who's always saying, oh, success is subjective, or my success, or this is what success means to me, is probably someone who was once ambitious and never got there. And if I was ambitious and never got there, then I shouldn't be using the measurement of which success is judged by to say this is why I optimized for something else in the end. You should be measuring it the exact same way that you once optimized for. So if I am someone who was trying to become, or let's say I was trying to earn $1 million in a year, and by the end of the year, I then say, and you know what? I'm glad I didn't get there anyways, because if I did get there, I wouldn't be happy. Imagine that framework. It doesn't even sound too unreasonable for someone to say. All of a sudden, what you once optimized for in the very beginning, you then revert, and you're saying, oh, I didn't want it in the first place because I knew what would happen. It would be bad. All of a sudden, you've gone back on it, and you've essentially given yourself permission to fail. That's what it is. It's like that same person who gave themselves permission to fail in the running race. You know, oh, I might, but this person's better than me, and I wouldn't be surprised if they win. That's the exact same thing. So, yeah, very, very similar mentality. And I think that this type of person is really just playing the victim card. And it's a smart victim because they know they don't want to lose either. And that's why this person does annoy me, because they lack a little bit of accountability. And to be fair, it's nothing. It's something that we just fall into naturally if you're a little bit smarter than the average person, because you realize that you can essentially divert the responsibility, or you could divert the accountability to say, not that I'm inferior, but this person was superior, and I knew that they were superior, which is why now me telling you before it even happened makes me as superior as them. I don't know if that dichotomy makes sense to anyone, but again, it's like allowing yourself to fail, which means you were always right in the first place. If my football team, if I'm going for the Central Coast Mariners, and I'm saying, go Mariners, but if Sydney FC win, they're the better team, and it's like, I think they're going to win anyways, or they could win, whatever it is. Maybe I go for Mariners and I just say, oh, I think Sydney FC are going to win. All of a sudden, when Central Coast Mariners win, I win because they're my team. Even though I didn't believe in them, I still win. And then if Sydney FC win, I win because I called it. I said, oh, Sydney FC is going to win. They're going to win. Even though I go for Mariners. And all of a sudden, you were right either way. And you're allowing yourself to fail because you know that whatever happens, you still win. And this person irks me. But it's also something to where I can be like, I understand where you come from, because you actually do have a good base point to start off. But let's just change it a little bit. Just take responsibility when you lose. It's your team, you lost. And don't try and claim something else to which you had no impact over. So if I then, if Sydney FC win, and I'm like, they were the better team, I shouldn't claim or try and win off that situation. Now, there is probably a counter argument to which is if it's actually like a valid thing, if you actually do think Sydney FC are going to win, and it doesn't come from a place of which is like ego motivated, just so that I want to say that, oh, I think that they'll win, and if they do win, I get an ego boost, or I at least feel like I didn't lose in that situation. Outside of that context, then I would say it's a little bit different. But yeah, success is subjective, but don't use it as an excuse for your lack of objective success. I don't know if that made a whole heap of sense. I think I probably went through a few different topics of what encompassed objective and subjective success and using it as an excuse. But if you have a rebuttal, please let me know. Or do nothing about it if you swag money. Or just, I don't know, message Alfio on LinkedIn. It's got LinkedIn now. It's looking pretty cool. So yeah, just message him, say, oh, let's do a podcast episode about it, and then we'll organize it. And yay! The frick was that? So weird. I'm so awkward. So, next one. Delayed gratification when it comes to success, in quotation marks. Now, this would be a great moment to say, make sure you do like and subscribe to this podcast episode. Make sure you hit that notification bell and make it ring ring. And then also, please follow Instagram because this podcast is actually about to change massively. This is probably like the last time that I should be doing, no, maybe not the last time, but one of the last episodes that I should be doing solo episodes. The reason why it is just solo episodes at the moment is because we are going a massive change. We're going to be getting the studio, and we're going to be making sick episodes, quite frankly. So, yeah, things are going to be moving, and very exciting. So make sure you do subscribe, like, or maybe come back and do that when you actually think that there's value in the content. Because you might not think there's any value in the content. If that's the case, then that's fine, because we're 178 episodes deep, and it's been about maybe 2.5 years now. And it's about time that we actually blew up. And I mean that solely as literal. No. Not literal. Why am I trying to explain a metaphor? It's about time that we blew up and got a whole heap of more listeners, and became world famous superstars, because much cool around here, obviously. So that's why we're investing in the podcast studio. Alfio will be moving in. Charles, hopefully. Jack, better be. If you're listening, Jack, you better be. It's not. It's ventriloquy. You can't even tell when I'm speaking out loud. Oh, I did move my lips. Failed. Just have a bit of fun here. Can't hate it. Anyways, caveat. So, make sure you do stay up to date. Sculpted podcast, sculpted app, sculpted merchandise. Maybe soon. Coming. Hello. And then also, live free. Come on out. And B42. Yeah. Yes. We're moving. You don't know what I'm talking about. Anyways, delayed gratification when it comes to success. Next topic. So, delayed gratification. I think delayed gratification is again immeasurable, which means that it's harder to do because you want to visualize the trajectory of someone. I'm someone who really wants to visualize trajectory. Like, I'll do everything in the world I can to visualize the path of which I believe I'm going to go down, because it gives me confidence in doing so, or taking the right actions, because it essentially means that the pitfall isn't as deep because I'm prepared for it, but it also may limit the cap, because it means that I might be only working to the system of which I think is correct. But that's something that I'm aware of, which means that also I may not be falling to the system that I put in front of myself, which is a good thing. I would still rather operate in the world of which I am planning things and being aware of where my next steps are. So, delayed gratification. Immeasurable. There's really no way of telling, how much gratification you should delay. You don't know if, you're going to do 70 reps of delayed gratification, that on the, 71st, you're going to actually get that gratification, whatever that looks like in any form. I don't know. You're going to have to take that up with the delayed gratification doctor. Big ups. Hope he's well, friend of the pod, if he's around. Haven't met him yet, but he definitely would be a friend of the pod. And caviar. That's the immeasurability of delayed gratification. I think delayed gratification is a great thing. It trains a lot of great habits and beliefs, because it also forces you to reflect. It makes you think, is it worth it? And sometimes if it's not worth it, then this is a great reflection piece of which can make you shift. Because if I always use this analogy because I actually stole it from someone. And hands up, I stole it from someone. I can't really say who it is. Yeah. Nah, I stole it from someone. Anyways, okay, yeah. Imagine if you were just drawing pictures on a piece of paper the whole day, and you were like, I don't even know where I'm going with this. Frick. I lost my train of thought. I think what I was going to say is, if you drew pictures of just one, like a box every single day, just a box, you would become the best box drawer in the world. At what point do you know that you're delayed gratification? Yeah, okay, I really don't know where I was going with that. Okay, caveat. Next one. Delayed gratification. It's important. Trains a lot of good behaviors, a lot of good patterns, a lot of good beliefs. There we go. If you were just drawing the boxes every single day and you were waiting for the moment of when, you'd be scouted from boxdrawers.com and, you'd get your $50 million check, by the time that you actually have been in the game for 50 years and you actually haven't got that point in time, then ideally before 50 years, you'd be like, okay, this may be not worth it. But if you are continuing to see a little bit of progress, a little bit of, validation that maybe you're doing the right thing throughout the process, then you can be like, okay, cool. I'll keep going with this. I haven't got it yet, but the delayed gratification one day in Yeshua will be there. And that's the beauty of delayed gratification. I think there's also a lovely bit of zen in delayed gratification. There's also a lovely bit of zen in solitude, which I'm a big fan of. Thought that I had last night actually was, do I need to go back into solitude again? I've had many years of solitude, quite frankly. From about 15 to maybe 17, I spent about 2 years truly just by myself in solitude. Obviously, I was traveling, playing football, and things like that, but to me, it was really in solitude. I'd say then maybe I had a 6-month stint when I was 17 when I went back to school. I went back to school for like 4 months. And to be fair, like I was still definitely in solitude there. Like I didn't do anything but train, but I was obviously interacting with people. Then probably from just after to, being halfway through 17 and then 18 to 19 being in complete solitude. And the last year is the most social that I've ever been. But I really do see value in solitude as well. You're forced to reflect. There's a lot of delayed gratification. And quite frankly, I do prefer being by myself. Now, there are also risks of which come with solitude because you're typically blinded to external opinions, which may be better. It allows you to come up with systems and processes of belief that may be positive or negative, to be fair. Although I would say that the people who are purposely putting themselves in solitude typically will have more positive because it's typically out of restriction rather than like situation. If you are someone who's situationally in solitude, it's a much harder battle because you probably don't want to be there. But someone who chooses to be in solitude, I think is not that it's easier, but it's definitely a life thing of which I think is a nicer place to be in because I wouldn't really want to be forced into solitude, which to bring it full circle into my ideology and CIA, please don't take this and use this against me at a later date in court. But it's, yeah, I think that it's a good thing to reflect, be forced upon reflection and improve. I actually forgot what my point was about CIA, and what my ideology piece was. But again, caveat, the mind goes everywhere sometimes. And that's why solitude is also great because it doesn't really give you the capacity to, like, I use that word a lot, by the way. It doesn't give you the capacity. I'm so smart. I actually just recycle and reuse all my buzzwords. If you haven't been told, or if you couldn't tell, sorry. Like I use, no, not effectively. I think I use another word. How do I literally wrote down the Nick soundboard the other day. Essentially, the sedimentary rock of the capacity system means that the sedimentary system can equate for the circumnavigation of James Cook University to when the political economic state of the world was really just the gyration of the sedimentary system. It's a problem. That's a problem. Where was I? Anyone who's listening to the audio right now will be so confused. Oh my days. You know exactly the word. You know exactly the word that you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, he is that. He is that. Quite frankly, you're correct. Delayed gratification, that's what we're on about as well. Goodness me. That's crazy. Delayed gratification, very important. Solitude, very important. I think that they really force you to reflect. It really forces you to be so zen. Yuck. It forces you to really reflect. It forces you to be within your own mind. Now, again, I do believe I've said this before, which is you shouldn't be in solitude for too long because if you do create a whole heap of beliefs which aren't counted or there's no pressure applied, then you are in a very dangerous spot, quite frankly. Because if your belief system is made out of the worldview that you have, and there is no chance of your worldview being changed, then you're probably operating really ineffectively. Like if I believed that this water bottle right here was orange, And I convince myself whilst in isolation that the world actually, this is orange and everyone else is wrong. And this is what I see. And then as soon as I get out of that world and or maybe I don't even get out of it. Maybe I'm still in this world and there's no one else, judging my opinion or testing the opinion. And I still believe that this is orange and everyone else is wrong, but I'm right. I still have to operate in the world where everyone else objectively sees this as green. But if I'm operating as this is orange, down the line, a lot of bad things can happen because all of a sudden I'm not in the society which operates. And this is an interesting thing that I heard from Andrew Schultz the other day. I'm a big comedy fan. And Andrew Schultz, big ups him. I hope he's well friend of the pod. He talks about how political opinions, and actually we've got a cool guest coming on soon, hopefully, who has a really good take on this. Political opinions are not necessarily like the most objective stance. It's actually where people's emotions and feelings are within them. So if I believe in X political view, it's not actually that political view that necessarily has the impact. It's the belief of which the people associate with said opinion or said stance in politics. And I think that this is something that's very true to where we have to look at the objective way, because if 99% of people believe that this is green, but 1% think that it's orange, then it's green. It is. Even if the right answer is that it's orange, like imagine this without the orange lid. If 99% of people believe that this is green, but 1% believe that it's orange, but the 1% are actually right, objectively it's green. And it's a weird concept, but the reason why I say that is because everyone, the 99% who actually operate this being green, have now created systems for this to be green. They've made this and the work around that, this is green. So if I say that the green bottles that I'm selling are worth $200, all of a sudden, because 99% of the population believe that these are green bottles, guess what? The green bottles go for $99 or however much I said. And this is the system that we operate in. So the objective is not necessarily the true thing. And it's a very difficult thing to operate. How have I got into this topic? What has this got to do with anything? Anyways, let me finish. This is how we view and see the world, is through the objective opinion of majority, essentially. And that's the difficult thing, because now, of course, there's like some things that are objectively true. Color is actually not one of them. Color is subjective, which sucks. But there are things which are objectively true, and as I've said, I've even said in this podcast, and as I always say, which is what I always say in quotation marks, as I've always said, that's another thing on Nick's soundboard. We operate in the world of which is objective to us, and the objective is the subjective objective is the objective. So if the majority do see the world in this way, then this is how it's seen. And I would much rather operate in the world where everything is objective, but also the reason why things are subjective is it allows essentially for some to thrive and some to fall. So it's there for a reason, Not that it was definitely like designed by the CCP. Big ups, hope they're well. I've said that for a reason. That shan't be named on YouTube. Just because I've got I definitely have some Chinese agent who's looking at everything I do. I know for a fact. I'm kept on a close eye. And if he's watching this episode, Bin Shilling. Ice cream. Yeah, I hope he is well, by the way. But yeah, that's the way that we view the world. That's your worldview, and that's why solitude is dangerous, because if you see it in a different way, but the world sees it in another way, and if it does have a negative repercussion on how you operate life, then this is a bad thing. Now, delay gratification, cool, swag money, that's it. This is the end of the episode. Make sure you do look at this and subscribe to this episode of the podcast. Follow everything. I'll see you in the next episode of the podcast, because that's how the podcast. Oh, sorry for being late this week. I was really busy trying to move to Sydney at the moment, and it's really difficult. So yeah, I didn't get onto that. My bad. Oh, thank you. Ciao.
Parado no bailão, no bailão. Ela com o popozão e o popozão no chão. O popozão no chão e o popozão no chão.